This is a podcast that seeks justice. Justice for the lives stolen by those in society that hide amongst us every day. Hidden in our towns, cities, and countrysides, the places that we work, and sometimes in our very own homes. This is Hidden Killers.
Welcome to the podcast. Be sure to press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any of our breaking updates and discussions on the cases that we are following. My name is Tony Bruschi. Today we are joined by Senior Digital Forensic Examiner Giovanni Masucci. We're going to be talking about the Bryan Kohberger case, about some of the digital evidence there that has been coming out that may still come out. We know what we know from what has been released in the discovery affidavits. Is that all that will be presented in trial? You recently appeared on the Nancy Grace program, and you were quoted as saying they're withholding other data as well, referencing the Kohberger murder investigation. Giovanni, what did you mean by that?
You know, and I know recently that the defense has asked for all evidence in the case, which I know they're getting a slew of information that was being handed over, I believe this week it was stated. You know, it's still an active investigation. Mm-hmm. So as they're collecting the data, so law enforcement have to go through a very methodological, how do I say it? Surgically over each piece of digital evidence, because they grabbed the Fire Stick, right? That was what was picked up, and a computer. Oh my gosh. And we know he was doing social media. So with the Fire Stick, if there's a connection between the Fire Stick with the computer and his history, his web searches, and what social media they utilized. And so, you know, they can turn over, you know, a forensic image of each one. So if I'm on the defense, I'm going to ask for any digital data. I want it. I want actual access to that Fire Stick. I want actual access, image of that computer and the Fire Stick. So, and I would assume that the defense would ask for that. Law enforcement have to go through that, and you know, until they complete their investigation, you know, on I would say holding their cards, so to speak, they can give over a forensic image of both those devices. But when it comes to the trial itself, I'm sure whatever they may have found or potentially have found on those devices, they'll utilize in court and try to enter it as evidence. Because to me, I'm going to be looking at digital data. I'm going to be looking at, you know, what searches that may have been done. You know, he was contacting one of the victims. Okay. And so you want to see the correlation. Was he doing any other type of stalking on social media of those victims? So these are things I'm going to look at. Typically, you know, when it comes to a case, I'm looking at profiling, and I know profiling is a bad word, but in the digital forensics world, you know, you could ask me what type of case it is. I'm going to tell you exactly where I'm going to be looking for the evidence. I've been doing this such a long time that it gives me insight into, I try to get inside the mind of the suspect. Sure. To where where that evidence is going to be, where I'm going to find it.
When it comes to data and physical evidence, is there a difference in what needs to be turned over in discovery?
Okay. Yeah. Everything should be turned over, but again, it depends on what is the defense asking for. Okay. Are they asking for a report? Now, a report. So if I'm a forensic examiner and I'm looking at this case, and you know, they ask for in a report, let's say from one of these forensic tools, I could put anything I want in that report. Okay. I have an option on my end to choose when I'm building that report, what's going to go in it.
Sure.
So that's why if I'm on the defense side, you have to explain that you want it all. You want a forensic image of the phone or any digital evidence. You want either access to it. I want it in my hand, or I want an exact forensic image of whatever evidence you have, of digital evidence that you have. And that makes a difference. Okay? You get what you asked for, right? So you want to make sure that you want to get all the evidence. You may not look at all the evidence, but you want to make sure that you get it. And this way, there's no discrepancy on what's actually received, what you ask for and what you receive. Okay.
Is that why we see such almost boilerplate language in those discovery requests, where it just literally tries to cover anything and everything one could possibly think of, whether it exists or not?
Yes. So I used to review search warrants for law enforcement, help them with it to make sure they do the correct wording on making sure they do correct searches, and that they're also not only doing an acquisition, but they're doing analysis and so on. That covers them. Now, on the law firm side with attorneys, again, I used to consult them on what they ask for. Okay, whether I'm doing a civil case and I'm on the plaintiff side or defense side or criminal, it doesn't matter. You want to make sure you're covering all your bases, so you're getting all the information. You don't want to miss anything. It's very important. So that's why it's pretty broad and boilerplated.
How much information, in your opinion, and this is speculation, do you think Kohberger had on the victims before the attack? He had been stalking the house according to cell phone ping data and triangulation, was following some on Instagram, even allegedly sent some messages that went unreplied to one of the victims. Was this just lust from a distance for a time, or was this all part of the plot?
I think it was premeditated. He was gathering intel. Very important, as he was reviewing his victims, as he was seemingly stalking his victim. He was trying to acquire as much information about who they were, what they were doing, and what their movements were. Very precisely. It seems like he knew what he was doing, and he was gathering information. So this way, whatever he was planning, allegedly, or what has transpired, that he had an accurate account of where they were going to be, what they were doing online, what information that they were sharing. That's one thing about social media. People just put everything and anything out there. And a lot of crimes are committed based on, knowledge that's just out there. It's, people saying they're going on vacation or they're not home, or they're going to be over at this location, and they'll be back at a certain time. I, for instance, had a close friend who said he was going to a football game, an NFL football game in another state, and he said what time he was leaving, and then he said when he was coming home. Well, in between that whole time, his house was burglarized, and not only his house was burglarized, but 2 and 3 more houses in the neighborhood were burglarized at the same time. So it was a crime of opportunity.
Sure.
And so, I try to tell my friends, I've been doing this a long time. I said, you guys know what I do. I said, it's just common sense what you do or you don't put out on social media. I mean, you can find anything you want pretty much about almost anyone just by looking at their social media. And so I think he was very methodical on his plans on, what he was going to do. He was gathering all the intel.
And this is more of a psychological question, but obviously this seems to be what he was doing. So I'm curious as to your opinion and insight on this. Why choose these girls if he didn't really know them other than just seeing them on social media and maybe, in passing throughout the small community that they lived in?
That is a good question. And, he was a criminal student. And so, I don't know what in his mind he was thinking. And maybe he felt that, and there may be other folks that he was looking at, other potential victims.
Sure.
And these are things that would be very curious to see, because I believe I read where, they turned over to defense over 1,000 plus photos. So was he looking at other potential victims? And maybe these were an easy opportunity. We don't know if he was looking at, you think about somebody going to commit this type of crime. So again, what's going on in his mind? Did he review other murder cases? Did he have a favorite serial killer that, he thought of, like, oh my gosh, I want to be like that person?
Sure.
Or some other type of murders that had taken place over the years. I mean, again, he was a student. I'm just saying, they research a lot of these cases in class. And so one may have sparked some interest and one may be of similar interest. And maybe he wanted to copy. So, I mean, these are the things that, a psychologist is going to look at. And I'm sure, the FBI has these profile psychologists that look into the minds of the person that's committing the potential suspect that's committed the crime. And so, these are all, pondering questions that, once they really get to know and look at his digital footprint, I think they're going to find out a lot more information than they're revealing. And now the judge has put a gag order on it, right?
Sure.
So we're not going to know anything else, until trial, from what I understand. And so I'm sure they're gathering a lot more information that's going to come out.
And with all that being said, and him being a criminology student, was it a level of arrogance, assuming I will never get caught, that allowed him to kind of make some of these stupid mistakes of, your phone is on and it's pinging everywhere you go? How would he have not thought of some of his digital footprint, being a criminology student, being young, understanding technology far more than someone who would be much older? To not consider, all the evidence he's leaving behind, other than just a real narcissistic arrogance that I'm going to get away with this. They'll never look at me.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money on that last part, because what happens is they get smug and they get, arrogant about it and think that, they get lax is what happens. And they think, yeah, I'm never going to count. It's a perfect crime, but it just takes one little piece of digital evidence. I mean, and you see, he was in the neighborhood, at different times. I'm like, everything is tracked, no matter what. Where it said that, he pinged off the different towers, right?
Yeah.
His vehicle was seen. I mean, I think maybe his arrogance and his cockiness that, he didn't think about that. I mean, those are flaws right there.
Sure.
That you're trying to commit the perfect crime and you're not thinking of all the digital footprints that you're leaving. And so, plus, I'm sure the adrenaline was rushing and the excitement of what he was doing. Because why was he in the area during those times?
Uh-huh.
It's just too many. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle that are interlocking now.
Sure.
And so I'm really interested in what's going to come out and what they're finding on his computer, phone. I mean, all this information that they're going to link together. And, there may be other incidences, which I'm going to tell you, I firmly believe that they're not the only ones that he's looked at, in my opinion.
Yeah. Very likely we'll find more of that out when it comes to court, hopefully later here in the year. There's just mountains, it seems, of damning evidence against the alleged killer, Bryan Kohberger. Is there anything that you can think of from what we've seen thus far that works in his favor for the defense of Kohberger in exonerating him?
Well, that's something that I haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
Or really that stands out to me. It seems like there's more evidence on the forefront here of potentially him committing the crime. And so, I have yet to see where it really sticks where his alibis and, why was he in the area? I'd like to know more. And unfortunately, we're not going to find that out until when it comes to the trial. So it'll be interesting to see what exactly that they find and what his defense is going to put up on his side. It just seems like there's too many connections at this point, based on what's already been released, so to speak.
Giovanni Masucci, thank you for your insights and your forensic expertise as we dive into that Kohberger case. Always appreciate having you on. Be sure to press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any of our breaking updates and discussions on this case. You can find links to all of the cases that we are following in the description of this episode. You can follow me on Twitter at TonyBPod. I am Tony Bruschi. For all of us here, thanks for listening.